was like, for 50 cents, you're about to pass out in front of this poor cashier. I was like, I will pay for it. I don't even care. I know, huge kindness for me.
Oh, wake up, rethink the status quo. When you get your money right, then you're the one who runs your life. Come build a wealthy spirit with Sammie and Michelle.
Today's topic is small town, big money. How changing the cost of living can make you financially free.
This will be interesting, Sammie, because we have lived in San Francisco. Now we live in a low cost of living, small town, remote, in the middle of nowhere. And people ask me a lot, how do you enjoy being in a small town? What are the benefits? Should I move to the middle of nowhere? Because I think people are on similar journeys as we are, where we are trying to lower our cost of living. We're trying to save our expenses so that we can actually spend more time doing things that we love and less time working. So I'm very excited to get into this because when I think about my day in San Francisco, which was waking up in our $4,000 monthly home that we split with 3 other people, hopping in an Uber, hopping on the train, hopping in another Uber, going to my office, getting ramen for lunch, hopping back in an Uber, back on a train, back in an Uber, getting a very expensive dinner.
I'm tired just hearing it.
It was a lot of money. And so, yes, there are a lot of benefits to being in a small town, and we want to talk about those. What do those benefits actually look like? What are the little things that surprised us? And just why it might be worth considering moving to a lower cost of living city.
Let's get into it.
But first, Sammie, I do want to talk about our partnership with Riverside.
As you guys know, we love Riverside. When you're hosting a podcast, you have to get video, you have to interview people, you need the audio collected, and you need something reliable and high quality. And that's why we love Riverside, because Riverside will reliably record both our audio and our video, and it will record it locally so we can be sure we get the content from both us and our guests if we are having an interview.
That's exactly right, Sammie. Sometimes I hear some popular podcasters, old school people, they talk about how they have 10 different recording devices and they have to make sure everything is backed up. And I'm like, y'all need to get on the page with Riverside. Like, we never have to worry about those things. Like, it's crazy how much mind space we can free up to just enjoy a conversation with each other, with our guest. So highly recommend it if you're thinking about a podcast, if you're thinking about some sort of live stream, something where you need audio and video recorded. Riverside is great. You can sign up with the link in our show notes.
Housing is the biggest cost for pretty much everybody. And that's why we're talking about it today. And we found a beautiful piece that complemented today's topic. It's by J.D. Roth, and it's called Cost of Living, Why You Should Choose a Cheap Place to Live. J.D. compares his home in Portland to places he's visited while traveling across the U.S., many places which were cheaper.
Yeah, it was really interesting, especially since he wrote Get Rich Slowly. So he's definitely somebody who thinks a lot about how to make the most of your finances, how to live a frugal life, and a lot of things with his experiences living in an expensive place versus visiting cheaper places lines up with what we've seen as well. There are some things that may be unique to being in a small town that we'll share as well.
So, as Michelle and I have said many times, we live in this small, teensy, tiny, very remote town.
Think less than 20,000 people.
Much less than 20,000, really. And in this town, we are getting a great deal on housing compared to what we were paying in San Francisco. Right now, I pay $1,175 for rent for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. We got a yard, we got a driveway, a lot of space, and it is super affordable.
I know, it's crazy, Sammie. We literally paid the same amount, if not more, in our apartments in San Francisco. Again, 4 bedrooms. My room was a dining room converted to a bedroom, which, hey, that was great for San Francisco. Great location. The lamp was a little bit low. Okay, I couldn't have anybody who was taller than me walking around because it was meant for a dining table and not a bedroom.
And to be clear, just in case it wasn't clear, we paid the same amount for 1 bedroom in that 4-bedroom house, not for the 4-bedroom house.
And 3 of us shared a bathroom together.
3 of us shared a bathroom together. It was a big old mess. And that's why housing can be such a big deal. Housing varies a lot, especially in the United States. If you live in a big city, you may be paying a lot for housing versus if you live in a smaller town, you may not be paying so much. And if you can find a way to save on housing, you can really bring down your expenses and you're going to be so much closer to financial independence or maybe even your sabbatical goals.
It's funny because in the article, he even uses the phrase penny wise and pound foolish, which I'm not going to lie to you. You know, I'm not great with idioms. I didn't know that means that you're being overly considerate about the things that aren't expensive, but then not even thinking about the expensive stuff. Housing is a penny wise, pound foolish to the T.
It is. You know, and when I think about this, I think about when I started on my FI journey. At that time, Michelle and I were living in San Francisco and we were paying quite a bit in rent. And I found out about FIRE. I found out about financial independence. So I wanted to start saving more money and being more frugal. I started with the small things, the penny wise things. In fact, I remember one time Michelle and I had gone to Safeway and I had collected all my coupons on my phone before I went to Safeway. And I was trying to get a deal on ramen noodles, which even in San Francisco, ramen noodles are not that expensive. And I was digging through my coupons. My phone wasn't loading, so I was kind of getting a little frustrated.
No. Okay, we need to take a step back, Sammie. Okay, Sammie and I are in Safeway. Sammie all of a sudden starts getting a migraine, an affliction that she has often.
No, it's not. It's like 2 times a year. Okay.
Fine. Feels like all the time. So Sammie gets a migraine. We're in Safeway. She's literally like about to open the medicine in the we go to buy what is it, Aspen that you need?
Yeah.
Motrin. And she's like tempted to open it. I'm like, let's just go buy it. But she also has this ramen and she's falling apart. Like she literally can barely think. I'm like, we need to get you help ASAP.
Okay, let me be clear. I have migraine with aura. So I could feel, when I was trying to look up the coupon, I could feel the migraine come on. And then there's this giant lightning bolt in my vision. I can't read well because I'm slowly getting increasingly obstructed by this glowing orb. And I'm like, I need to find the freaking coupon right now.
Sammie's literally sitting there. She's scrolling. I'm watching her and I lose it. I was like, for 50 cents, you're about to pass out in front of this poor cashier. I was like, I will pay for it. I don't even care. I know, huge kindness for me. And that was not a great introduction for me into personal finance or FI. But I think this is what happens when you get so obsessed about the little cost. And then ironically, we're paying an arm and a leg for rent.
Yes. I was very much being penny wise and pound foolish because at that time, it was not that easy to move. But as soon as we got the chance, we got the heck out of there because that was bringing up our cost of living significantly.
I think a big thing here, Sammie, and one thing I appreciate too, now that we live in a small town and our major foundational expenses are lower, is that it actually means that you don't have to be so cheap or so frugal on the very, very little things. I even remember when I left my job, I immediately went into a scarcity mindset because I was like, oh, I have to save all my pennies. I want to make sure I'm being really conscientious. And I remember being in Rite Aid buying deodorant.
And let me tell you, that's not something I want Michelle to cheap out on.
I'm looking at Dove. I'm looking at all of them. And I'm literally trying to save 25 cents. And I'm like, is it worth it? I'm looking at the ounces. I'm trying to find. And I was like, oh my God. I probably spent 15 minutes standing there. And I was like, this is absolutely insane. I'm over-indexing on 20 cents. And of course, when I looked at my spending for the year, it wasn't deodorant that was robbing me. It was my car. Car stuff is just expensive. And so, yes, I think a big takeaway here is that think about the big cost, your housing, the thing that's probably taking up by far a majority of your spending. And if you can take that down like we did, you're going to make huge leaps in saving money over whatever period of time that you're living in a low cost of living area.
Which brings us to the second point about living in a low cost of living area. Not only is your housing less expensive, but a lot of times other things are less expensive too.
It's interesting in the piece that J.D. Roth wrote, he talks about keeping up with the Jonases. And he specifically says that if your neighbors all have nice cars, you're going to want a nice car. If your neighbors have bigger houses, you're going to want a bigger house. It's very natural to even subconsciously just increase your lifestyle to that lifestyle inflation, because what you're seeing is the wealth around you. And so if you live in a lower cost of living area, it can mean, and we have seen this for ourselves, that you're actually less inclined to spend money on inflating your lifestyle costs because everyone around you is like at the same level.
And if you live next to the Jonases, you probably are going to be wanting to spend more on a car because whether it's Nick, whether it's Joe Jonas, they probably are driving a pretty nice ride and you maybe want to drive something a little nicer.
I'm just saying, I don't know anybody with a last name Jones. It doesn't even make sense to me.
And in all seriousness, it's true here in our town too. Like, I feel very comfortable driving my Honda Fit around. But this past week, I got a flat tire, so I was not driving my car, and I took Michelle's car, which is a Toyota RAV4. And it's electric blue, so it's just like flashy. And I felt so extravagant going to work in this. I felt like I was drawing a lot of attention to myself. I felt like maybe I seemed kind of arrogant. I can't even imagine having a Tesla here. I feel like it would just be extreme.
First off, okay, you feel that way because your coworkers, after seeing that piece of junk on wheels coming to the office every single day, which, surprise, surprise, once again has popped a tire, they're like, wow, you finally got a new car. I'm sorry, my used Toyota is flashier than your car. But you are right. There's definitely one person who has a Tesla in town. I feel like we know who they are.
Yes, exactly. And if you were looking for someone to rob, you'd probably go to that person's house. And the other thing is, as far as lifestyle inflation goes, there's just nothing to do here. So it's hard to inflate our lifestyle. Like when Michelle and I want to have like a nice little sister date, we head over to the next town over, which is like about 15, 20. It's really like right next to our town.
It's like 10 minutes.
It's mainly a town that's there for pumping gas, which is even less than our town.
It's a literal ghost town. Like they have a sign that says they're a ghost town, which I never really understand.
Yeah, I'm like, well, what makes them a ghost town and us not a ghost town? But anyway, the point is, they have lovely gas stations. That's probably the big feature over there.
Very nice.
They have the 76 gas station, which has a fat burger. It's going to be having a smoothie shop soon. And they have a little outside table, which actually faces the river. So it is so cute. And that's where me and Michelle go if we're looking for like a nice little date out. Or I believe we went there for Christmas even.
Yes, Sammie. It's very nice. And it actually, like, it's a little bit higher than the rest of the desert. So we have this like nice view of the sunset, the mountains. It's very, very nice.
And sure, maybe we're spending $15 where we'd normally spend $5. But the inflation is not that much.
It's true. Actually, someone was recently asking me about my thoughts on moving to a small town. And I was thinking about it. And the interesting thing is when you think, oh, there's nothing to do. First off, we're not really bored. I think you just fill your time the way you fill your time. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, I've really come to appreciate the things that I actually like when I'm, say, in a city, or the things that I actually miss versus the things that I was doing but didn't really have value. So a good example there is I don't really care about the fact that we don't really have anywhere to go to dinner. Mm-mm. Yes, we can go to McDonald's, or if we're really feeling spicy, we can go to Sizzlers. But those are our options, but I don't miss having like Michelin star restaurants across the city. That's just not something I personally value. I do miss a yoga class or a spin class. A Soul Cycle, they bring a Soul Cycle into our small town.
We might never leave.
We might never leave. That would be the dream. Probably not next on their list, though. And so it is interesting. Like, I think I really understood in our extreme situation where we went from like big, like, you know, one of your major cities to a really small town that doesn't have a lot of stuff. It actually helped me recalibrate to be like, okay, I used to do all this stuff because everybody was doing it, but I don't miss the ice cream museum. I miss Sweetgreens, buying a salad somewhere that's not Jack in the Box.
Not to knock Jack in the Box's salads.
It's a solid salad. They just don't always have it, like today.
Yeah, it's just like really high demand. So it's not always there. Another benefit about living in a low cost of living area is there are a lot of phantom costs that high cost of living areas have that you avoid in a low cost of living area.
So true. What is a phantom cost, Sammie?
A phantom cost is a ghost of costs. No.
There are phantom costs in the ghost town next door to us.
A phantom cost is a cost you don't think about, a cost that's not so obvious. You know, when you think about moving to a place, you do think about rent. But maybe you don't think about the fact that you're going to have to Uber to so many places because there's no parking. Or maybe you don't think about parking tickets. Let me tell you guys something. I had a car in San Francisco, which if you guys have had a car in San Francisco, it's like its own special nightmare. It is the most unique nightmare that anybody could possibly have. First of all, there's like 15 different ways to get a ticket in San Francisco. Number one, to park on the street, you have to get a parking permit. And the parking permit is not cheap. I don't remember exactly how much it was, but it's like $200 or $300. And it's not easy to get either. There's like a whole process. 2, the parking tickets. There is a ticket for everything. There's street cleaning tickets. So everywhere you park, every little street you park on, you got to make sure what time is the street cleaning and you better not be parked in that area at that time. For most streets, you can't park for more than 2 hours at a time. So you got to find a little way to be shifting your car every 2 hours to make sure you're not going to get that ticket. One time, I brought my parents' car home, so I parked their car in our driveway. That's right, our driveway.
Our driveway.
Part of our home.
The thing we're paying $4,000 in rent for.
I guess the car was blocking the sidewalk. And mind you, like, let's say you're walking down a street. You're walking on the sidewalk. You are approaching someone's driveway. Their car is in the driveway, so you can't just walk in a perfectly straight line. Like, you were gonna walk with no obstacles or something. You have to just kind of curve a little bit and go around the car. I guess this is unacceptable because you can get $100, $200 ticket for that too.
Literally. Not only did Sammie get a ticket for that, one of our roommates got a ticket for that. And the thing is, listen, okay, we were in this bougie neighborhood. Like, we weren't in somewhere where there was like a ton of people walking around.
Mm-mm.
Like, I would understand how that would be a little bit more of an inconvenience. The people in our neighborhood just despised people breaking the rules. So we literally could not be an inch over the driveway or the sidewalk. And our roommate one time asked somebody about it. And she was like, well, what if somebody was blind? And you know what? I'm going to say it. That's bullshit, okay? I'm like, this neighborhood is so bougie. Like, I can't even believe you're, like, pretending like you care about somebody else. You're just an asshole, and you just need to admit that. So, yeah. What was the point?
So, their parking has a lot of costs. And when me and my roommate were having issues with parking, I was like, let me try to find another place. Maybe somebody has a parking spot that I can park in. And I found a place for like $150 a month, which is a steal in San Francisco. Let me tell you. First of all, this place is already a block from where I live. So I was trying to purchase a parking spot that's like a block away from where I live. Me and Michelle, luckily she came with me. We go to this man's house and this elderly gentleman comes out in jorts. Jorts or jean shorts. And it was freezing outside, so there was no need to be wearing jorts.
He was like this like tiny, frail dude. And he comes out in his little like Bermuda jean shorts. And he's like, hey guys. He's like, okay, perfect. You have a small car. I think you guys are going to fit here. So Sammie like pulls in. We get into the parking lot. I swear to God, 3 sides of us are covered by cars. Like, we're like, holy crap, how will we get in?
Like, my Honda Fit is probably like the only car that would fit in this spot. And it was still not easy. I had to like turn and move and turn and move and turn and move. And I was like, by the time I was done, I was like, I'm not going to be purchasing this parking spot.
The guy in the doors is just like, all right, out a little bit, up a little bit, out a little bit, out a little bit, out a little bit. And he's like, yeah, that's not so bad. It took us like half an hour. Like, we both got out of there just like wide-eyed, like, okay, we're gonna roll the dice on street parking again. So yeah, having a car in San Francisco has a lot of phantom cost. In our small town, I don't even think about parking. Like, you could park anywhere on our street. Tons of space.
You can park in the dirt. People always parking in the dirt.
Yeah, you can park on the dirt. I saw the guy come once for street cleaning, and I just waved to him, and I was like, oh, I'll move my car. Because those are the kind of things, people here are nice, okay? You can just communicate with each other. And he's like, yeah, I'll just come back around. You literally do not have to worry about those type of things. So there are a lot of phantom costs that you avoid living in a lower cost of living area. Like, a lot of times, even if you were in the suburbs somewhere, you're not really paying for parking.
Another advantage of low cost of living areas. This is one that, yes, me and Michelle cannot personally relate to, but if you have kids, it seems like these high cost of living or low cost of living costs can be exponential in whichever direction. For example, if you live in a high cost of living area, private schools are more expensive. Childcare is more expensive. Your children might have expensive hobbies. You know, instead of playing basketball, they might be into polo.
Horse polo.
Yeah, the one with the horses and the sticks and the balls and stuff. And
that's what we just assume rich kids do.
That's not cheap. That's not cheap.
Equestrian.
Here in our small town, it doesn't seem like childcare is nearly as expensive. Also, the children, they don't need to be cared for as much. We see them walking around on the streets all the time.
Nobody worries about them like it's safe. Not to mention private school isn't even an option here.
If you wanted to go to private school, you came to the wrong place.
Something to consider. I will say with low cost of living areas, you know, it was interesting to hear JD Roth talk about things like in Portland, how different suburbs, he had to go to like artisanal grocery stores, which was something that I could relate to at our last home. But you do have to be careful because just because something is, say, not a big city, we live in a small town, we have a lot of cost associated with just being remote. Like the cost of our groceries are expensive compared to other places. If we need to go get something, like go to the eye doctor, we don't have one in town, so we have to drive 2 hours. So that's $100 in gas. If you need healthcare, it's going to be rough. You're going to be spending extra money.
If something happens to you that doesn't require more than an ER, you're probably going to get flown out. So helicopters aren't cheap.
And then you get stuck there, then the mayor has to come and get you. These are all real issues in our town. So you have to find a balance. Those costs do not add up to the amount of extra money we were paying in rent to live somewhere else. But now that I'm starting to think about, okay, what do I want my next steps to be? I think somewhere in the middle would be nice. Still close to an airport, somewhere we can drink the tap water, but not necessarily a place that bringing my car will add another 10 grand to my cost.
Takeaways.
Takeaways from today's episode. The number one takeaway is housing is the most expensive cost for most people. And if you're willing to change your location, you can supercharge your purchasing power and accelerate your savings rate, as JD Roth says.
Exactly. We wanted to use ourselves as an example because we are definitely benefiting from living in a small town. And even if you do it for a small period of time, it can be a really great way to save money. Especially, you know, in my case, I'm on a sabbatical. I'm not necessarily working full time. And so it was a really nice exchange for me to move somewhere a little bit more private, a little bit more quaint in order to save money.
And Michelle just said something really, really key. It's not necessarily something you have to do forever. It's kind of a fun experience because you get to see how to live in another way. And if you're willing to do it for a short period of time, there can be huge benefits.
Yeah, exactly. And I hope that it will help me in the future with things like, say, lifestyle inflation. I imagine that having had the opportunity to live in a smaller city and seeing the things that I actually don't miss will mean that I won't necessarily feel inclined to just spend money on those. I think when we were living in San Francisco, we were raising our cost without realizing it, and this has been a really nice reset.
And after lifestyle inflation, the next takeaway is phantom costs. Living in a high cost of living area not only has the known costs, but it has many phantom costs that we often don't consider and can't anticipate before we move there. So another benefit of the low cost of living area is avoiding all those random costs that you don't think about, like eating at fancy restaurants every night or parking tickets.
Community time!
So before we say goodbye, Sammie, we did want to do our community time.
Absolutely, Michelle. Welcome to community time. Thank you guys for joining us.
So the one downside of living in a small town, Sammie, is dating. And we haven't talked about it that much on our podcast, but
There's really nothing to talk about.
There's nothing to talk about. I recently wrote a piece about how I was offering $1,000 to anybody who's willing to find me a husband. If you listen to this podcast, you probably know somebody. Feel free to introduce me. I'll share the essay if you want to read it.
Phantom costs of a low cost of living area.
Here's the thing, though. So it came up on Doc G's podcast, and a lot of people have been keeping their peepers popped. And boy, do I have a great story for you. Our mother.
Bless her heart.
Bless her heart. She has a very sweet coworker who's our age who messaged me on Instagram and she said, hey, I have this friend. He's Indian like you. He's a nurse like your mother. These things don't matter to me, but I think they're important to the story. And I have been trying to be open-minded, so I was like, yeah, whatever. Tell them to send me a message. But because this is my mom's coworker, and, you know, she's the one that really cares about those things, I sent her his private Instagram and was sort of joking like, oh, look, a nice Malayali boy. And she got really excited. Let me tell you. She didn't admit that.
She doesn't admit that. She says she doesn't care, but it seems like maybe she secretly would love if we found a little Malayali boy.
And she was like, oh, your dad will be so excited. And she's like, maybe you should just talk to him. I was like, I don't know. She was definitely really pro it, but she was like, oh, I'll ask my coworker later and see what she says about it. So a few days later, I'm chatting with my mom and I'm like, oh yeah, did you ask Kathy about her friend? And she was like, oh my God. And I was like, what happened? And she's like, Kathy comes in and she is telling me, oh my God, why did you friend this guy on Instagram? And now I start dying laughing because my parents aren't the most tech savvy. And let me tell you, they don't like to admit that they're not tech savvy.
Nope. Especially our mom.
I did not do that. I would never. And here's the other thing. My mom, for some reason, refuses to use her real name on Instagram. And in fact, she actually uses my dad's name. So this poor guy thinks that my dad added him on Instagram after Kathy introduced us. Meanwhile, I have made no contact. I have not followed him, nothing. So he goes to her and he's like, hey, I think your friend's dad added me on Instagram. And she flips out because she's trying to get this $1,000. Okay, I don't blame this girl, you know? So she goes to my mom and she's like, what the heck happened? And mom's like, I didn't do anything. She's like, I don't know. This Instagram, they just add people's friends to me. And she was like, you definitely did it by accident. Now he's totally freaked out.
She's like, I couldn't see all his photos unless I clicked follow. I'm like, follow means he's your friend. Okay?
And she's just telling us the story and I'm just dying laughing because let me tell you something. As an Indian child, you do wait to tell your parents things because you never know when they're going to get too excited and ruin everything for you. And my mom would not like to hear that, but I felt very vindicated that she messed everything up. Which I love my mom. It was really just a funny story.
So anyway, point of the story, if you guys have somebody for my lovely sister Michelle, she's still looking and there is still a $1,000 prize to whomever finds Michelle a husband.
like to think of it as a referral bonus. But yeah. And depending on what I think about them, I may or may not send their Instagram page to my mom. She will validate them first. Just kidding. Though she would love to do that. And of course, now she's trying to make it seem like a good thing. I like that he didn't accept my friend request. It's good that he freaked out. I'm like, any normal person would have freaked out in that situation. But alas, it wasn't meant to be.
And as far as community shoutouts this week, Michelle and I actually got the awesome opportunity to be on the Deconstructed Woman podcast, which is hosted by our very own cousin Joji and her co-host Elisa. We had a great conversation about money and money being millennials. It was just a great talk, and we highly recommend you check out her podcast to listen in on that episode.
Yes, it's a really awesome podcast. Like, we're so excited that she launched Deconstructed Women. They have many episodes out, and she really tackles issues that women are dealing with, both in their home life, work life, all of those different aspects. And so it was really exciting to give her our perspective, which, as you know, is get your money right and you control your life.
Mm-hmm.
So let us know if you have a listen. You can find us at buildawealthyspirit.com. Leave us comments. Let us know what you think. Are you now planning to move to a small town? Do you want to come to our small town? I wouldn't advise it. But if you are thinking about it, let us know. There are a lot of benefits. And if there's any that we forgot, drop them in our comments.
And most importantly, be sure to join us next time as we put down the rulebook and we rethink the status quo.